Okay, hello. Good morning, everyone. Uh, we're going to start our second day of this wonderful symposium. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. If you were here yesterday, welcome back. And if you're joining us for the first time, again, a very warm welcome. We're very happy to be able to be back at this wonderful venue to begin the symposium, begin the second day of the symposium. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all of you who generously helped us make this event come together to become a success again the second day. Andrew Kircher, Director of Public Humanities and Research at Bard Graduate Center. Jason Brown, Assistant Director of Public Humanities and Research. And Nadia Rivers, Coordinator of Public Humanities and Research. This symposium is also supported by the 2023 Korean Studies Grant Program of the Academy of Korean Studies. And we would also like to express our gratitude to Daniel Seung-Chul Lee, who is sitting in the back. He's currently the Japan-Korea editor at the Harvard University Asia Center, but before joining Harvard, Dan served as the director of publishing for almost 10 years at Bard Graduate Center. And in fact, the symposium was Dan's initiative. His enthusiasm really has been the driving force in bringing this project into fruition. And Kyung-hee and I really look forward to working with him again in the future. So without further ado, I think I should move on to our very first panel titled The Consumption and Waste of Devotion. And I don't think our first speaker actually needs an introduction to the audience in this room. It's no other than the co-organizer of the symposium, Professor Kyung-hee Pyeon, who is Associate Professor of Art History at the Fashion Institute of Technology. Her scholarship focuses on history of collecting, reception of Asian art, and intersectionality of art and technology and industrial history. And as we all know, Professor Pyeon is a prolific writer and editor of many volumes, including Fashion Identity Power in Modern Asia, Interpreting Modernism in Korean Art, and most recently, Design History of Korea, Critical Perspectives of Primary Sources, published by Bloomsbury in 2023. As an art critic, activist, and curator of contemporary art, she has also published American Art from Asia, Artistic Praxis and Theoretical Divergence with Michelle Lim, and Expanding the Parameters of Feminist Artivism with Gillian Hanum. She has received 2 educational grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities, the first for teaching business and labor history to art and design students, and another grant for Shop Girls to Show Girls, teaching resources on New York's working class for community college students. Professor Pyeon holds her BA in Archaeology and Art History from Seoul National University and an MA and PhD in History of Art from the Institute of Fine Arts, New York University. And today she'll present a paper titled Neon Crosses of Korean Churches, Marketing and Religiosity in Contemporary Design. Please join me in welcoming Professor Pyeon.
Thank you so much coming. Thank you so much for coming early in the morning. So, okay. My paper may be a little bit longer, so I'm going to see the cue from Jason, and then I'm going to move on. I'm going to show you some slides, but then move on. So this is research in progress. So I hope you be a little bit kind to me. But before I start my talk, I am thankful for artist Jo Suk-jin. She feels honored that I'm presenting on her work, but she is away in South Korea for a month. So anyhow, in major cities, churches are hyper visible at night as their red neon crosses light up the skyline. Seoul Cross 2017 by Jo Suk-jin is a photography work showcasing a night view filled with churches. The red neon crosses on the roof of a church. A red neon cross is like a commercial structure. So I will show you some of the close-ups. So it's 72 photos together for the installation, and then these are the individual shots. So Korean conceptual artist Jo Suk-jin's recent photographic work, Seoul Cross, depicts a spiritual space, the roof of a church, rather than a space of consumption, desire, and pleasure associated with neon signs. The biggest characteristic of Korean neon signs is the red color on church roof that has appeared since the late 70s. The red neon signs of a church quietly blinks in 72 photos in the artist Suk Jin-jo's sensibility, which sublimates old chairs and rusty furniture part into installations of transcendent space. Red neon sign, like a commercial structure, which is taken for granted as a natural part of the city's night streets, quietly looks down on indifferent modern people. The neon sign seems to be asking whether we are living to fulfill our dreams, hopes, and desires. Even the common red sign looks unfamiliar in art photos. So paper has two folds. The first is to contextualize the use of neon gas tubes as expressive media of contemporary art. And then the second is to see the advancement of technology in marketing religiosity in Korean evangelical Protestantism. My research questions are: how much consumerism or consumption valid for religiosity or religious congregations? To what degree can we judge devotional practices are excessive or wasted? And how much material culture in the form of contemporary design of neon gas tubes or LED light panels has been employed to enhance religiosity in South Korean Protestant churches? So I'm showing you the scenes from 1921 and then 1965. Neon gas tubes for non-Korean viewers are nostalgic signs of nightlife from the 20th century, usually signs of bars, theaters, or restaurants. In New York's Times Square, a flashing electronic billboard continuously broadcast dazzling videos day and night. 20 years have already passed since the 21st century, and computer programming is improving day by day, making it possible to reproduce any image you want. With the addition of augmented reality and virtual reality, video images will soon become more realistic and feel tangible. However, even in the 1990s, Broadway theaters, cafes, bars on 42nd Street and Art Deco style movie theaters were still using red or yellow neon signs. Additionally, artists such as Dan Flavin, Bruce Nauman, and Jenny Holzer were creating artworks borrowed from commercial neon signs. So, as an art historian, I just want to show how neon tubes have been used by contemporary artists. And moving this part really quickly and jump to Korea. So, I have a whole part on minimalism, but I'm going to skip this. And then let's talk about advancement of technology in marketing religiosity in Korean evangelical Protestantism. So in Korean Protestantism, technology and art became indispensable components of evangelical entrepreneurship. I talked about the adoption of westernized menswear among Christians in the 1920s in my article, Hybrid Dandism, European Woolen Fabric in East Asia, back in 2018. Many images are taken by Methodist missionaries. Historian Paul S. Cha wrote a book called Balancing Communities, Nation State and Protestant Christianity in Korea, 1884 to 1942. In that book, I quote, "Conversion to Christianity granted Koreans membership in a faith-based organization that, at least in theory, transcended national and political boundaries. As a result, Korean Christians possessed dual membership in a transnational religious community and an earthly political state. Some strove to harmonize these two associations. Others privileged one membership over the other. Unquote. Scholars of both Korea and world Christianity have identified South Korea as a prime example of the successful spread of Christianity outside Euro-America in the 19th and 20th centuries. Paul Cha successfully interrogates the construction of Korean Protestantism and argues that, I quote, frameworks anchored to nationalism or the nation state fail to capture the complexities of this religion's history in Korea and the relationship that formed among Korean Christians, missionaries, and government officials, especially during the colonial period. Church in a spiritual space rather than a space of church is a spiritual space rather than space of consumption, desire, and pleasure, commonly related to neon signs in popular culture. Historian Eun-young Lee Easley noted the advancement of Korean mega churches in the neoliberal capitalism. So I'm jumping from the adoption of Christianity in the early 20th century to mid 20th century. Likewise, Haewol Choi also emphasized prosperity gospel in Protestant Christianity in modern Korea. In fact, some of the Korean Christian missionaries represented by the University Bible Fellowship target white Americans for conversion, reversing the conventional direction of evangelical activities, which had been dominated by white Western missionaries targeting non-white colonized subjects in the early 20th century. So these are the keywords about prosperity gospel. So this is one example of a Korean megachurch in Seoul. So Christianity in Korea brought modernity, as argued by Albert Park and David Yu. Haewol Choi focused on changes in women's lives by Protestant missionaries. Like Puritan ancestors of the United States, Christians in Korea also emphasized material wealth brought by hard work, sincere faith, and innovation. There is a long quote, but I'm going to skip. Prosperity gospel is the word by Myeongsam Seo. Seoul, the capital of South Korea, is the site of 18 megachurches, including the world's largest megachurch, Yeouido Full Gospel Church, 순복음 교회 in Korean, with a membership of approximately 800,000 people. In this model, Emil Durkheim's dichotomy between sacred and profane is blurred in growth-focused South Korean Christianity. So let me briefly summarize entrepreneurial success of installation of neon cross towers in South Korea. So let me skip a little bit. So this is an old church in the 19th century. So it's not very different from any church in towns in New Jersey or Connecticut, like a small church made of brick. But then we have, this is Korean style mega church. You see all the parkings like along the river. So this is the Yeouido Full Gospel Church. So some say that neon crosses started around 1978 and became indispensable in the early 1980s. One may think of the curfew as a deterrent of evangelical mission, but one must note that neon crosses are really for those coming to early morning prayers. So when you think of Korean curfew, everything closes at the midnight, and then things will reopen at 4 a.m. So thus, having neon crosses were effective for church members coming to pray before going to work. The regulation on building expansion statutes became tightened to include light pollution in recent decades. So the neon crosses, neon signs are usually shown in this kind of entertainment district up to 1982. But then when the curfew law was lifted, then 1980s is considered the heyday of neon signs. But Korea has a strict zoning code, so commercial area you can have this kind of busy neon lights. But if you go to the residential area, like there are certain regulations against the neon signs. So church neon signs actually blur these boundaries of architectural laws and other things. So, so I'm going to the light pollution in a moment, but let me read a little bit. So what people were thinking of the crosses are like these, like Las Vegas style. That's what inspired people in Korea in the 1980s. So hold on. I have this amazing example of light pollution. Yes. So early in the morning on December 22nd, 2020, at 6 o'clock in the morning, a cross lighting movement was held in front of the Korean Christian Union Hall hosted by Korean Senior Pastors Association. The reason they are doing this is it was the time for senior pastors to look at the sad reality of Korean churches where cross that used to light up the city night has disappeared and earnestly appeal to the cross to be lit again. It's coming from their press release. In his greeting, Pastor Shin Shinmuk said, I quote, "Darkened city nights are pushing the Republic of Korea into crisis. When the cross that illuminates the night is erected again, there will be hope for Korea, and the Korean church will once again enter a period of revival." Unquote. Adding that it is time for Korean church to participate in the cross lighting movement. So what I'm trying to summarize is from 1980s all the way to early 2000s, there were a lot of neon crosses, but then things are moving toward LED lights. And then architectural law became a little bit more tightened so that people start to talk about the light pollution. There is a huge debate about how to regulate brightness of LED light. Like we didn't have a problem with the neon signs because it's a tube, right? But then LED, it is computerized and you can really adjust the brightness. And there are a lot of complaints in the residential area. So there is a law. Currently, there is a law regulating the lightness, brightness. So then the church elders came out on the street and sort of advocate for relighting church crosses. So it shows that religiosity, like a great eager. So in exploring the dynamics between religion, music, and politics, historian 현경 Hena Chang uses the concept of fugitive Christian public, in which Korean converts proactively utilized Christian connections in the construction of Koreanness, ethno-national consciousness, and secular modern life and relations. Koreans' adoption of Western musical practice, for example, was embodied in the appropriation of Western melodies for songs with nationalist lyrics. Chang argues that sentimental secular songs that thrived in the religious community, I quote, embodied the fugitive orientation of this Christian public. They were evocative and affirmative, yet ambiguous and oblique, especially with regard to the issue of Korean independence, unquote. The concept of the fugitive Christian public helps us understand not only the religious origin of secular musical experience, but also the micropolitics of everyday life among the colonized, to whom engaging and performing sentimental, nostalgic secular songs in the religious community provided a fugitive space to foster Korean national identity and modern subjectivity. So Korean Christianity is known for its exuberant entrepreneurial spirit. So there is an example showing the entrepreneurial spirit. In the post-war Republic of Korea, conservatives supported the anti-communism of promoting revivalist and evangelical movements with goals of individual salvation. individual salvation. That's what conservatives supported. During the military dictatorship, prioritizing economic development and urban migration, the Korean Protestant population miraculously increased from less than 3 million in 1967 to more than 10 million in 1987. I had a growth of the church somewhere. Thus, Korea is known for mega churches like Yeouido Full Gospel Church, begun with 5 people in 1958 and now hosting more than 500,000 people over a weekend. The number of churches, small and large, is also immense. Protestant churches and church-related institutions are 55,000 in 2017 compared to Buddhist institutions of 13,000 and Catholics at 2,000. So I want to show you what the construction behind this. So this is a news article saying that in the beginning of the 2010, a lot of signages are changing into LED. So church also wanted to take some action, and then this is a patent by someone to create LED light panel for crosses, and then if you have a large construction, then you also have a portable crosses that you can purchase. For example, and these days, where are they manufactured? In China, like so you can buy this kind of cross, LED cross, and then I also have a slide explaining the construction cost of this. Did I show you the slide of construction cost? Yes. So it's about $10,000, and I am not going to describe all the legal matters, but there are chain of command in the construction law, so you have to go through a lot of agencies in order to get the permission. And if something's wrong, they will come back and ask you to correct. And as we heard yesterday about the magic, right? Like an agency, the way that this neon cross stands for 10 years, 20 years is a miracle for the community. They went through a lot of bureaucratic hurdles, and with the help of God, it's still there. And then there are a lot of new changes to replace with LED. And I'm not going to talk about location of the churches, but where was my slide of? So in Korea, churches can be sold and purchased like a real estate. So you actually have a website called, what's the name of the website? You see it over here, and anybody can go and then you can see. And whether you have that neon cross tower on top of the building or not, also a huge factor for a priest to purchase the church. You can see how much more work involved, right? So you want to get a building with a permission or with the existing neon tower. And I'm a little bit sorry because I changed my talk after I submitted my my PowerPoint. But there is this advertisement company talking about this one. Yes. So this is a typical structure of a Korean church, and we saw David Kim's presentation yesterday. Do you remember that Cheonjiam, that shamanic center, is right next to the Christian church? So it's very common. So whenever you go to commercial building, like you have a pharmacy and other things on the first floor, chicken, but then you also have Cheonjiam kind of shamanistic practice along with the church. So there are this like a do you see the name called church planting? So this is a 개척교회, or it's called pioneering churches. And the goal is you start with, remember, like 5 people at the Yeouido Full Gospel, and then it increased 500,000 people in 50 years. So that's the miracle manifest. So neon cross plays a lot of roles in those narrative. So this paper argued how contemporary design has been employed to enhance religiosity in South Korean Protestant churches. It also contemplated on how materiality is negotiated and reconciled in the intersectionality of religiosity and technology. Mega churches are equipped with mega churches are equipped with the most advanced audiovisual technology and its products. So this is another research that I was doing. I was writing a paper and then doing the nethnography. Like I go to a lot of internet communities and read about what they think of these things. But then these days, churches spend a lot of money for audio technology. Can you guess how much individual speaker costs? It's high tech, almost like a music concert hall quality, and then the voice of gospel is going to be spread through these high tech like speakers, and each speaker was about $10,000 or more. So it is a lot of investment. So I'm not going into this technology parts, but how religiosity cultivates access to benefits from technology would be the next question. So my presentation is over. Sorry, it's a little messy, but this is the new directions that I am talking about. So building as a sacred institution, branding as a company, originality, material culture, marketing strategies, and compressed or condensed religiosity. Like in Korean modern history, we talk a lot about compressed time in it. And religiosity too. It has really like a strong flavor in a very short amount of time. So Yoido Full Gospel Church also look at this, because they are the main institution. They don't really care about that tall cross, right? The entire land is theirs. Versus if you have a small, like a pioneering church, like a planted church in a apartment complex, then it's one room. So you care a lot about your neon cross or LED light as a point of your visibility. Anyhow, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, everybody, and please sponsor our books, especially interpreting modernism in Korean art. This book has a lot of chapters that you have questions for from yesterday and today's presentation. Yes, actually, you can take a picture with our celebrity, our celebrity Jong Ah-woo right there. If you search for Jong Ah-woo, like today's speaker, she's all over YouTube. She's a celebrity in South Korea. Anyhow, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Professor Pan. I have to say the neon cross signs are really prevalent and ubiquitous in any Korean urban landscape. So thank you for taking us behind the scenes and defamiliarizing what is a very familiar sight. Our next speaker, Mirose Huang, is Associate Professor of the History Department at Hiram College in Ohio. Her research interests include Cold War mass killings, indigenous rituals, and community restoration. Professor Huang has held positions as a research fellow at the Institute for Korean Studies at Yonsei University and a visiting scholar at the Institute for the Study of Religion at Seogang University in Seoul. She's a 3-time recipient of the National Endowment for the Humanities Summer Institute grant and a 3-time recipient of the Korea Foundation Field Research Fellowship. Professor Huang has published various articles on the coloniality of shamanism, and her paper today is titled Ritual Rice and the Hungry Nation, Shamanic Excess During the Great Depression.
I'm immensely grateful to Professor Hyun Shin and Professor Pyun for your incredible generosity for allowing me to come here and participate in this very fun and exciting seminar series. So thank you also to Professor June Kim from BMCC for introducing me to these lovely people. Without her, I would not have known about this conference. This paper comes out of a couple different things, iterations. So back in 2012, I presented a part of this paper at the AAS in Toronto, where I created a panel with where Dr. Laurel Kindle was the discussant, and David Kim from yesterday, alongside Manduhai Buyandelger and Songnei Kim, were all attending. And so there was a lot of interesting conversation that came out of that. And then Travis Workman at the University of Minnesota in Twin Cities also invited me to give a paper at the Korean Languages Association in 2018. So other parts of the paper from there. I'm just very slow in producing things. I hold on to things for a while. Before I get started, I just want to thank the people of the traditional land of the Erie and Western Seneca, Mohawk, Oneida, and Onondaga, and the later Yundat and Cayuga people of the Iroquois League, who also call where I live in Northeast Ohio their home. I want to also recognize that I'm an uninvited guest and settler on their land, that I live, work, and prosper off of the Treaty of Greenville that's never been honored, and I'm working to find ways to come into solidarity with their land back movement. So this is, you want to maybe try to remember this photograph or this picture that is next to this, this magazine article that I'll be talking about in the middle of my presentation, because I'll come back to it. But this is I don't know if I need to show you this. Actually, everybody probably knows the very kind of famous image of the Tarengi rice village, and this is as an example of sacred rice. I don't think I need to tell this to Korean specialists, so I'm gonna just move on to the next slide, where this was based off of my research that I had done when I was at the Institute for Study of Religion at Seogang University, under the auspices of current Professor Emeritus Kim Sung-nae. So we were attending this particular kut by Kim Min-jung Manshin, and she is a good friend of Kim Sung-nae's. She was celebrating her spiritual birthday. This is in Seoul, and I won't go through all the details about it because of the time, but what I want to show you is the attention to where I'm positioned in this photograph. So if you're looking, we're on the side, and so if you're looking at the stage, stage left, the closest to the camera, are the foods that are the ones that are supposed to appeal to particularly the vegetarian gods. And then on the far stage right, under the plastic tarp, are these very large flakes of red meat that are packed really tall, to kind of appeal to the carnivorous gods. And what I do is I kind of call this a a kind of buffet, a buffet shrine. It represents a kind of repetitious interaction and exchange with the divinity. And I call it a spiritual buffet because there's kind of something for everyone. And the bounty of it shows that it's kind of an all you can eat for the spirits. Divinities are, so they're all kind of represented in their culinary tastes here. And I think I'll show you part of the video. So there's, can you see? I guess you can't see in this one, but in the next one, you'll see on the just beside the stage right, there is a bunch of mostly male musicians known as tangor, and they're going to be playing music. This particular image or the video is of Kim Min-jung's spiritual mother, who comes and blesses her with her messages from her tutelary spirits. And I want you to pay special attention to how she handles the shrine food. So she places a little tray of food on her head, and she dances with it. And then she puts that down, takes the makgeolli that Kim Min-jung serves to her, swirls some of it out in her mouth, and then she spits it out onto the garden. And she does this. She repeats this several times. What is meant by that? Dr. Kendall and I had a brief conversation about it yesterday. Maybe it's a demarcation of a space that is meant to be venerating certain types of spirits, and then leaving the kishin kind of out of that kutang. But for whatever reason, we see this kind of spectacle of throwing out of food and drink. It's a 3-minute video, and there's not enough time, so I might show it to you later if you're interested, but you get the general idea. So ritual rice acknowledges the relationship between all sentient and non-sentient creatures. And when I say rice, I'm including the whole kind of epistemology of rice in Korean culture to mean food, to mean purity, to mean abundance. All of those kinds of meanings are I'm trying to capture that here. And it also demonstrates our interdependence on those relationships. For a historian, looking at the critiques against the shaman food, what they do with food, I'm looking at it also to appreciate the epistemology of relationships that are kind of beyond the kind of colonial state subject binary. So it's really exciting for me to pursue it that way. In this image here, we've got the same ritual in the latter part of the first day. This is a 3-day ritual. But you see outside of the shaman space on the left-hand side, the one of the altars that had been made purified, and then the blood that was the ritual meat that was blood that was spilled on that. The cardboard box is just to help with cleanup. But to the right side is the meal that we were given as kind of outsiders. Some of the meal items, the food items, were directly blessed by the spirits, and we were strongly recommended to partake in the meal because that was the kind of order of the spirits. And so there is that kind of consumption that's happening as well. So what does this mean for us here? Let me see here. Okay. There is a kind of frenzy that happens in the early 1930s. There's always been, as far as I know, from everything I've ever read, from the late Koryo all the way through the Joseon era, whenever there was writings about Mudang and Mugyok, they were fairly negative for the most part. But there's a kind of accentuation of the wastefulness of Mudang practices in the 1930s. And so I'm trying to make sense of that. This particular story that comes out captures that hysteria. And so I wanted to share bits of that with you today, although I can't go into the details of all of it. So this is the Who is this person by the name of Murang Ni. And what ends up happening is some passersby on the street see the head of a baby without its body anywhere, and they're shocked that they see this beheaded baby. A little while later, a man's body is found at his funeral without its head. And they have found out then that the body belonged to the wife of this person that died was this Murangni. And this happened in the summer of 1933. From what I see, there records of the temperature of Seoul at this time were extremely high. Some newspaper reports were saying that it was the hottest summer they'd ever experienced. This is in Chukcheon district near Sodaemun. And how was this happening? They surmised that rich clients were paying this mudang to recruit and run homeless orphans throughout the city to traffic human body parts. And why was this happening? They said that it was to traffic those, especially human brain, to cure clients of madness, and then other forms of mental illness. After the story, the Joseon-ilbo broke the story. It was picked up by Donga-ilbo, the East Asia Daily, but they dropped it after a couple of days while the Joseon-ilbo ran it almost every single day for 2 weeks. And then they finally dropped it with the final scene of Shamanri in jail while her adopted daughter was outside of jail, kind of in a fit of tears. Now I want to switch our attention very drastically to, actually, before I go that, let me try to contextualize this. So what's going on here in 1930s? So as literature experts in this room may well know, cannibalism is a trope of contact zone anxiety. So there's a lot of literature on that. Colonial hybridity, it's also a trope of that. But as I'm going to try to demonstrate in this paper, it's also a trope of this kind of newly globalizing Korea. It goes without saying that colonial trope was a form of epistemic violence, or as Derrida put it, a violence of the letter. David Spur argues that colonial journalism and other forms of nonfiction, despite conventional expectation, depend on the use of myth, symbol, metaphor, and other rhetorical procedures more often associated with fiction. I am struck, though, by the conditions for this literary repetition. I believe that reportage emerged during critical moments of political economic disenfranchisement, when marginalized groups were targeted to express the psychopathology of criminal populations in order to generate sensationalistic tremors associated with this catch-up extraction economy. Shamanic cannibals demonstrate how the print media portrayed these negative byproducts to capitalist labor production and the global austerity metrics of the Great Depression. The collapse of the world market in 1929 dealt a severe blow to the Korean agriculture and cast most of the rural population into debt. What compounded the problem was that in 1932, the Choson government they sponsored a so-called 농촌 진흥 운동, the rural revitalization campaign, to align rural populations for greater agricultural output and to mobilize human resources in preparation for a war on the mainland. Agricultural output generally increased during this middle period of Japanese colonialism, and yet rural Koreans faced a food deficit. So many of you might know the story. All that food was then, that surplus rice was being shipped to Japan, and then Korea was kind of left to starve. So a lot of people have written about that. They created these new irrigation systems, waterways, reservoirs, also coupled with new chemical fertilizers to successfully increase high-yielding rice varieties. At the same time, there was this labor surplus and land scarcity that contributed and intensified the use of cheap labor for agricultural production. So focused on those metropolitan needs, a disproportionately large amount of rice was exported, and agricultural depression caused rice prices in Korea, especially over other agricultural products, to fall really drastically. Concentrating exports on this one crop made it precarious, and rice prices plunged deeper than any other domestic crop. Most of the rural population, with the exception of large landlords, fell into debt. Class polarization also accelerated, and leading Daoism to describe the situation as, quote, a starving hell where people live because they cannot die. Landowner-tenant disputes increased, and a boycott broke out almost every day in urban areas. Legal measures were issued to protect farming tenants, but those were also used to serve and to mobilize human resources in preparation for total war. Most of the major papers in Korea were in line with these new measures, since they promised order and progress for the rest of Korea. In fact, in August of 1933, 동아일보 celebrated the 농촌 진흥 운동 for helping to get rid of shamanism, and it also praised the police for, at one point, for arresting 88 shamans, saying that that was going to help them join the efforts to oppress superstition. So now I want to take you to the other side of the world, and so you have to stick with me for a second. Trigger warning, this is a quite graphic, so. With this postcard, I want to focus our shift, our gaze, which normally goes to the horror of the lynched bodies of Thomas Shipp and Abram Smith, by superimposing onto it a kind of mimicry. I think limiting the exposure of tortured subaltern bodies like this helps us to be cognizant of when and how we attempt to trigger our students into effective learning. So I show it to you for a second and I take it away. Rather than capitalize on lynching of Black bodies as pornography, as Lawrence Beitler, the photographer, was doing, I want us to zoom in on his audience, to problematize a throng of people participating in the spectacle and exacerbating such murders. So I'll return to this in a minute, but the Korean cannibalism case sparked a media frenzy. So a Shir Sengwar Journal editorial, which is this superimposed image, dedicated a monthly issue roundup on related stories, and its columns warned the public on problems of commercial homicide. It echoed the dailies that decapitation incidents have been found in Seoul and Chaseong, urging the public to know how human meat could never cure any illness. That's a quote. Its image and column titled Fruits of the Depression, 불경이 열매, explains that unemployment is becoming more severe by the day. Although one wants to work, there are no jobs. The picture depicts an abundance of haggard faces as the fruit of unemployment and the fruits of poverty. The heads of unused workers are shown as rotting fruit, wasting away in a depleted countryside and labor-saturated industries. Shown here as disembodied heads, manual laborers are portrayed as the martyrs of a new age. They represent vampiric nature of industrialization, a surplus of peasants, a deficit of jobs, escalating unemployment. And the editorial warns of scarier times to come. So these conversations stem from people living within a lived and imagined place of global austerity. Let me just move forward here to kind of show you the kind of repetition. So if we go to Beitler's postcard, that postcard emerges in 1930. I found that in the United States, lynchings in the US were fairly uncommon, but they fed our imaginations as a pervasive practice in the South to protect white women and to terrorize African Americans. Andrew Buxter studies the ritualization of American lynchings, where you find postcards like this of people gathered, usually after a homicide was conducted, as festivities ensued around these lynchings. Sometimes festival goers would actually go to the people that had been murdered, and they would cut off pieces of clothing, sometimes cut off fingers or toes, and then keep them as souvenirs of the festivity. At other times, they actually mailed them off through the postal service to their friends as gifts. So in 1932, Shi Senghua's strange fruit followed. I want to imagine with this the copy of Beitler's postcard, how it may have made its way to the Korean press by the summer of 1932. So Beitler takes the photograph in August 30. It becomes so popular that he puts his signature on it, and then he begins printing them for the lynching festival goers. He sold thousands of copies of this. Meanwhile, it was officially illegal for these postcards to be mailed in the US Postal Service, but obviously, because of the sheer quantity of them, we see that they had very blatantly ignored those laws. The media had free reign over such reproductions. The Associated Press always reported on lynchings because they thought them newsworthy. I discussed this with Woody E. M. Beck from the University of Georgia, where he informs me that, quote, that meant that a story about a lynching could and did spread very widely beyond the local area. When the first successful transatlantic cable was laid right after the Civil War, those lynching reports in particular the ones that had mass mobs and that were singularly vicious, like this Beitler picture, made their way to Europe and into European newspapers. And they were kind of condoning the violence at the time. In fact, in the 1930s, then, lynching incidents increased somewhere between 100 to 200%. The major dailies in Korea also regularly reprinted Associated Press reports during this period, joining this global media frenzy. If colonized intellectuals were versed in the works of Marx, Trotsky, Kollontai, it was possible they also came into contact with third world internationalists like U.S. W.E.B. Du Bois and his Souls of Black Folk that were serialized in the Atlantic. So we can glimpse the horrors of the Jim Crow South in colonial Korea. Let me just skip forward there. So, From there we have, back here in New York City, Abel Mirapol. Thank you. Abel Mirapol, a Russian Jewish man who was living here, he also sees Beitler's postcard. He was so haunted by it that he wrote a poem about it called Bitter Fruit. And then he changed the title to Strange Fruit. And many of you probably know where I'm going from with this. He put a musical score to it, and it was sung in various cafes around the city prior to his famous collaboration with Billie Holiday in her Fine and Mellow album in 1938. These fruits of the Depression were repetitions in global form and function, regurgitating the shocking juxtaposition of burnt flesh to scent of magnolias, heads hanging from a tree, underneath, in the Korean case, a smoke-stacked skyline. So I'm not going to go to the last case on the Holodomor, though I have a lot more I could give, but I know I'm out of time. So I'm going to just give you my preliminary conclusions. Terror and repression were invoked in the news every day in the 1930s Korea. If reporting begins with the gaze, eyes were glued on what was not yet visible. All the missing pieces: Shaman Lee, a child's body, a husband's head, a vagabond boy missing an eye, a placenta without the rest of its birth, and worst of all, vampiric consumers lurking in the dark, hungry for human flesh. Apparently, the media did not find it newsworthy to discuss the charge, due process, much less any possible habeas corpus for the shaman. When writers assumed her guilt anyway, legal deliberations were frivolous details that simply did not matter to the dailies. The Shaman Lees of the world were always predisposed to crime. She was made to represent the epitome of the unsociable evildoer and to establish trust in the imperial penal system. Efforts to create modern civilized colonized societies were neither natural nor simple. They faced a course of complex struggles in the context of highly charged fields of power. Internal divisions developing out of competing economic and political agendas, conflicts over access to local resources, frictions over appropriate methods for safeguarding state privilege, competing criteria to recognize local elites and for restricting its membership. The discursive production of gluttony, waste, cannibals, and executions helped writers identify the very categories of oppressor and the oppressed, and to impose their prerogative over the imagined community. As widely networked agents, creative journalism crystallized techniques of governance, revealing the interstitial layers and interoperability of what Walter Vignola calls the colonial matrices of power. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions now?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was really interesting presentations. I have a question to Professor Pyun. I think the foundational history of South Korean nation state has been really directly related to Christianity, I would say. And from your presentation, if I understand correctly, I think Christianity implemented in South Korean culture in general as if it's like a pastiche or fetishism. And one may say that, you know, the South Korea has been in a way like colonized by US empire through religion. Like, I wonder what is your view about that premise? And also I want to know more about what is your view about this, you know, the comparison between more direct form of colonization from Japanese empire and this US empire, the construction behind this religion in South Korea.
Okay, thank you so much for the questions. But if you see the introduction of Christianity to Korea, Korea is one of the unique countries that people are, how can I say, voluntarily adopted Christianity. So that is from the 18th century. So that is before any colonization. You can find the Confucian scholars who went to Beijing as diplomatic envoys, and they were reading the Bibles or Christian doctrines, and then they decided to become Christians themselves. So that's the beginning of Christianity in Korea, like a Korean history. But then fast forward, Korea was under a lot of influence of Christian missionaries from 1880s and onward, and that's what you experience as modern education system or modern medicine. A lot of modernity came from Christian missionaries and relationship with the Christian people. And then fast forward, if you come to around the 1920s, a lot of nationalist activists, patriotic activists, they were also early Christians, and Christianity and independence movement were also working together side to side. So some group of Christians, they were against inhumane treatment in the colonial system, and they remained patriotic activists. And then that's also, you see the division of opinions when it comes to the end of colonial period. So a lot of Christians, communism and Christianity cannot exist together. So that's why a lot of people also chose the Republic of Korea. And that's why now, you know, let's say around the 1770s onwards, when you see conservative Christians, they definitely became anti-communist, and because they are anti-communist, many times they would look like a pro-US people. But then also, if you think about the 1980s democratic movements, there are also Christians who are against dictatorship as well. So you cannot think of Christianity as a sort of a dichotomy. There are many dynamic dimensions. So that's my view. And you know, in the presentation of Red Neon Cross, I wanted people to see that dynamic application of religious symbols or religious mechanism for like a Korean style religiosity. So overall, if you attended our panel yesterday, Korean people are overall very into spirituality and religiosity without that monotheistic, like organized religion. I mean, they, you know, they would do any form of religious activities, even in the Korean fandom as well. Like a neon cross, it is a commercial symbol, right? But then they took the symbol away from the commercialism or profanity and then reinvented as a very important symbol for growing church spirits. So that's maybe I want people to be aware of that dynamic. How can I say, like a dynamic spirit within any organized religion or unorganized religious activities.
Uh, so without preamble, uh, thank you both professors for your wonderful talks. I have a question for Dr. Pyun. So I'm fascinated by your conception of compressed and condensed religiosity. I think it's like excellent. But can we think about compression or condension, not just in the rapid pace of the economic development, but also in the physical and visual density of cities, megacities like Seoul, like population, environment, even like stimuli, like you talked about light pollution. So I would like to hear more about that. Thank you.
That is a very good question. So I was thinking a lot of architectural historian when I was writing this paper, but like a mixed use buildings, right? In Korea, if you go to apartment complex, you have that commercial like a unit. How do I call it? Like a complex, like a shopping mall style complex, always in the apartment complex, and then in it, like you see the density, like all kinds of business are collected together, but you can also categorize which business would flourish on the first floor versus second floor, from your observation, right? Like, even though we are not real estate developer, by living in that apartment complex, you can kind of see, what would flourish. And like these, how can I say, organizers of church planting or pioneering church also see the spot in the way that next to McDonald's, shop would be located, right? They know the. So what is interesting is, I mean, it's not a laughing matter. Like when you saw the red neon cross photos carefully, when you see all the darkness, these are apartment complexes, and neon cross only goes on top of the shopping mall unit. And because it's a shopping mall unit, with the architectural law, it is allowed, but you cannot go in there. And then previously, if you go to before this location became apartment complex, these are what, like small houses, a lot of tenants are living together, and there used to be more neon crosses. So like when you talk about the spatial density, it's totally applicable to the Korean model of religiosity, and that's why you allow cohabitation of different religions. These days I sometimes see Buddhist prayer house is also in that shopping mall unit. Like, if you think about the Buddhist temples, it's usually in the mountains, right? It's our tradition of like a Sunbulgyo or like a Zen Buddhism style. So it's in there, but then they are also moving into the urban towns because there are not many rural places left in South Korea. So the density, visual density or spatial density is as applicable for religiosity as well.
Any other questions?
Hi, I have a question for Dr. Huang. Can you talk a little bit about kind of Black American culture and how how it's integrated into kind of Korean history, especially you talked about the 1930s, but also with Dr. DeYoung, BTS fans raising for Black Lives Matter, and of course there's so many participants in hip hop with K-pop. And I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit more in your period or otherwise.
Oh. Yeah, I have no idea about K-pop. But I think that there is I'll reference to you Nick Estes. He is a Dakota scholar, a historian, and political scientist. He wrote a book in 2018 called "Our History is the Future," where he talks about third world internationalism connected to First Nations people here on Turtle Island. And he considers and he was partially my inspiration, I think, for my imagination of the kind of colonial Korea within this rubric of third world internationalism. Certainly there were lots of discussions about how to solidify movements without using kind of insurgency vocabulary, thinking about ways to connect to the rest of the world. And so one of the arguments that I make based off of his understanding of W.E.B. Du Bois's connection to First Nations activists is this idea that colonial Koreans really were attuned to the problems of racial problems that were existing in the United States and elsewhere. And so that's something that I think deserves further research. Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, please join me in thanking the presenters.
Okay, welcome to our final panel. The 2 days have gone so fast. It's titled Modern Remakings of the Vernacular. Our first speaker is Dr. Soo-hyun Mok, an expert of Korean modern art and design. She teaches Asian modern art and visual culture in the Department of Asian Languages and Civilizations at Seoul National University. Dr. Mok is also affiliated with the Institute for Japanese Studies and the Kyujanggak Institute for Korean Studies at Seoul National University, as a member of the editorial committee for the Korean Journal of Japanese Studies. From 2016 to 2017, Dr. Mok served as the chair of the Association of Korean Modern and Contemporary Art History. Having earned an MA in Aesthetics, MA and PhD in Art History from Seoul National University, Dr. Mok's research interest is in the discursive construction of the nation state in Korean history. She received the Kim Bok-jin Art Award in 2014 for her work titled The Transformation of National Symbols During the Japanese Colonialism, from the icon of patriotism to that of commercial emblems. In 2022, she received another prestigious award called Seongnam-이 Gyeongsong Art Theory Award for her pioneering research of Korean modern design history and publication of the catalog raisonné of the painter Lee Jung-seop. And today she'll present a paper titled Modern Graphic Identity in the National Flag of Korea. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Mok to the stage.
Thank you for introducing me. I'm grateful to Kyung-hee and Hyun for inviting me to this conference. I'm honored to be here. The main promotional image for this conference, Korea National Flag, is from my presentation. My presentation delves into the fascinating history of Korea's national flag, revealing its surprising connection to the establishment of a modern Korean state. Excuse me, I'll take my eyeglass. Through the lens of a material culture, we will explore its production, distribution, and application across various media. As Korea opened its ports in the late 19th century, the need for a unified national identity became paramount. Traditionally lacking a single iconic symbol, the creation of a national flag emerged as a critical step in communicating Korea's unique identity to the international community. Embodied within the material culture of Korean people, the national flag transcends mere representation. It serves as a profound symbol of the nation's spiritual essence, capturing the fundamental principle of yin and yang, the dynamic flow and balance of the universe. The powerful symbol, aptly named 태극기, due to its central 태극 design, and four rounding 사괴, 건 means sky, 곤 means earth, 감 means moon and water, 리 means sun and fire. rooted in the traditional Confucian philosophy. This image on the left currently houses in the Schiphelt documents at the U.S. Library of Congress, represent the first recorded instance of the Korean national flag being presented, dating back to the establishment of diplomatic relations between Korea and the United States in May 1882. This marked the beginning of Korea's international flag shame, extending its use to other countries like England and France, with whom new trade treaties were established. The national flag also became a symbol of Korean identity abroad, with diplomats raising it at their residences, as evidenced by Park Kyung-hyo's acts in Kobe, Japan, in September 1882. In 1883, a landmark moment transpired when a Korean delegation visited the United States. During their visit, the Korean national flag was proudly raised for the first time on American soil at a hotel in Washington. This momentous event captured the attention of esteemed New York Times. Quote, "Their flags, which was flying on the Chester A. Arthur, had the points of the compass on the corners and hieroglyphic in the center, representing the Korean emblem of happiness." This book, named The Flags of Maritime Nations, printed in 1880s by the U.S. Navy, features spelled 태극기 shame and served as a critical tool for identifying ships arriving and departing from the various U.S. ports. Notably, the book used the then common spelling Korea for Korea and positioned its flag after China's, reflecting the alphabetical order at the time. And this is the big woman. This the spelled shame is the same. In 1887, Korea established its legation in the United States, acquiring the pictured building. The right, a prominent symbol of the national identity, a large Korean flag adorned the loop, while a second, intricately engraved flag graced the building's porch. The left. Interestingly, the porch is a later addition, as evidenced by the contrast in building on the right side. Image. Crafted from iron, the porch boasts a unique design replicating the shape of a Korean flag. Ascending the stairs to the first floor, one encounters a striking Korean flag prominently displayed on the right side on the hallway. Even within the guest room, the national emblem finds its way onto cushions. While the Korean government lost diplomatic power in 1905 and was forced to sell the building in Logan Circle, Washington, it has recently been repurchased, currently undergoing restoration. This historic site is destined to become a vibrant museum. So, the 1880s witnessed the Korean national flag primarily serving as a powerful symbol in the realm of international diplomacy. Historically, Korean imagery primarily focused on symbols representing the monarch. However, the 1880s marked a turning point with the introduction of the 태극기, a distinct symbol embracing the entire nation. This new flag became a ubiquitous presence, proudly displayed during royal parades, private residences, and government institutions on national holidays. The photograph on the left, captured around 1900 by a French priest, captures the grandeur of a royal parade. The image on the right, taken in 1907 by German visitor Hermann Sander, in front of a government office further illustrates the consistent practice of raising the national flag at official buildings. In 1897, the influential newspaper 독립신문, independent newspaper, recognized the lack of the public understanding regarding the national flag. Highlighting its significance, the newspaper declared, quote, "The national flag is the body of the country," quote end. As a result, 태극기 became a visible symbol at various public events, including school sports days and the groundbreaking ceremony of the Independence Gate, 독립문. You see the left. This imposing stone gate displayed the 태극기 prominently alongside the inscription 독립문, symbolizing the unwavering commitment to safeguarding Korea's independence from foreign powers like China, Japan, and Russia at the time. By around the 1900s, the influence of 태극기 extended beyond the public spaces, with newspapers incorporating the national symbol into their titles. These concerted efforts to promote national identity resulted in widespread adoption. A document from 1905 even noted that virtually every household proudly possessed the national flag. The Juri 태극기 is known to be the oldest surviving example. Pierre Louis Juri, an American polymath and resident of Korea from 1882 to 1886, acquired this flag in 1884 and later donated it to the Smithsonian Institution. Crafted from silk, and the paper is the 태극 and four surrounding symbols named 사괴 are vibrantly painted with red, blue, and black colors. Behold the Deni 태극기 as you see from this card and the ornament. The oldest known large-scale example, named after its owner, Owen Nicholson Denny, in the right, who served as a close advisor to the Korean king from 1886 to 1890. Denny is believed to have taken the flag with him upon returning home, suggesting it was likely crafted during his time in Korea. After Denny's passing in 1900, the flag's existence faded from memory. However, through the delayed research of scholar Swartout, who was captivated by the history of Korea and U.S. relations and Denny's contributions, it was rediscovered. Swartout found the flag in the possession of Denny's descendants and facilitated its return to Korea. Now it is in the Museum of National Korea. Today, the Denny 태극기 stands as a treasured national artifact, its intricate design and historical significance woven into the fabric of Korean identity. In 2021, I had the honor of participating in the survey that led to the designation of the Denny 태극기 as a treasure of Korea. This unique opportunity allowed me to closely examine this historically significant artifact firsthand. As you can see, the flag's size is truly impressive. Its sheer size and weight were immediately apparent, even when carefully turning it from front to back for examination. It is a large flag measuring 182.4 centimeters long and 262 centimeters wide, and the front and the back are slightly different due to the production method. Designating the front side is A and the back side as B, it's notable that on the side A, the flagpole is positioned on the right, and while on the side B, it is on the left. Examining the reverse side of the Denny 태극기 reveals fascinating details about its construction. Two wide curtains, each measuring approximately 91 or 93 centimeter wide, were carefully sewn together vertically, while the majority of the flag was sewn with a sewing machine, demonstrating the adoption of modern technology. The rim features hand-stitched grooves. You can see left side. The introduction of sewing machines to Korea is known in 1877. Close examination of the taeguk symbol of both sides reveals variations in its construction. While the diameter of side B, right, measures 115 period 8 centimeter, the diameter on side A is slightly smaller at 113 centimeter, resulting in a 2 period 8 centimeter difference. This method involved the process of cutting and filling pieces of fabric to create the precise shape of taeguk and the fogue. The taeguk was crafted using the flat felt seam technique. This process involved precisely folding the seam allowances of the red and blue stripe, placing them on the top of each other, and pressing them firmly to create two standing lines. Do you understand this technique? I was very this 리괴 was constructed using the same technique. The process begins with cutting the desired shape of gue from the white fabric. Next, slightly larger pieces of blue fabric were carefully cut and sewn onto the white gue shapes. As a result, side A, right, left, is cut to the size of cut out, and side B is made slightly larger than that. The Deni taegukgi boasts a meticulously sewn strap designed for secure hanging on a flagpole. A multi-layered cotton string, expertly twisted together, forms a 5 centimeter long loop at the top and a 50 centimeter long loop at the bottom, ensuring a stable and reliable connection. Further examination revealed the presence of mammalian hairs inside the middle image, identified through Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy and microstructure observation. So hard. At the time of Deni taegukgi's creation, domestically producing cotton exceeding 90 centimeter in width was a significant challenge. This raises the intriguing question: where did such a large piece of fabric originate? Fortunately, historical references offers clues. Similar fabric appears in other artifacts from same era. The Buddhist hanging scroll in the left, named Gyeobul, at Hunguksa Temple, created in 1902, is crafted from cotton bearing a stamp identifying it as a Manchester cotton. This suggests that following the opening of Korean ports, imported surged, including British or American textile. Additionally, records indicate the importation of a vibrant red cotton known as Turkey red during this period. These particular examples were once owned by American missionary William Arthur Noble, who served in Korea from 1892 to 1934. Notably, these two flags are constructed by sewing red, blue, and black fabric onto white silk. Alongside the taegukgi, there is a piece of paper bearing the handwritten inscription, Korean flag up to Japanese occasion, believed to be written by Noble's wife. Other taegukis have been made using the same method. Ernest Bevell, a British journalist, arrived in Korea in the early 20th century and established a newspaper named 대한매일신보. Through this publication, he actively contributed to promoting Korea's independence. It is known that Bevell raised this flag in front of the newspaper building. Ko Kwang-sun, a key figure in the fight against Japan's aggression in 1907, is associated with the 불원복 태극기. This flag, crafted using methods similar to other flags, is distinguished by the Chinese character 불원복 embodied above the 태극. We can see only the outside outline of the characters are visible on the back. 불원복 means hope not far from restoration of national sovereignty. This slide explores the fascinating evolution of the national flag of Korea from 1882 to 1910. Through an examination of actual taegukgi and historical images, we will observe a variation in the flag's design, including the shape and direction of the taeguk and the arrangement of the quays. All are different. While the lack of specific regulation makes it difficult to identify a definitive rule for taegukgi size during this period, the Parker's documents and other available evidence offer valuable insights into the flag's early design and size variation. A schematic diagram presented to a British diplomat in November 1882 is one such example. This diagram is currently preserved at the National Archives of England, and it included the written size of the flag, length and width, and diameter of taeguk. And their units are denoted as 척 and 분 and 천. Let's examine the size of the taegukgi hosted on a ship as an example of the taegukgi used in Korea. Documents from 1899 provide information about the size of the flag attached to ships. Understanding the significance of attaching flag to ships, as discussed earlier in the flags of maritime nations, people primarily traveled and engaged in trade by ships at the time. Ships were marked with flags to signify their country. The image depicts the Yangmu-ho acquired in 1903 in Korea, adorned with numerous flags, including the taegukgi. Can you see the top of the? Yeah. Then, where was the flag made, and how much did it cost to produce? Unfortunately, there isn't much recorded information on this matter. In 1895, the Korea Dokwon Supervisory Service commissioned the Illohan Trade to manufacture some flags. Illohan Trade seems to be a company that trades between Japan, Russia, and Korea at the time. The total order consisted of 829 pieces, including 60 sets of high-quality flag with flagpole and oxbows, and 769 pieces of low-quality flags. The cost for one set of high-quality items was 1 silver coin, while a low-quality items was priced at 59 jeon. 1 silver coin could cover about 50 light meals. In contemporary, if a light meals cost 10,000 won in Korea, 1 silver coin would be around 500,000 won or $380, making it quite expensive. On the other hand, a low quality item would cover around 10 light mills, which is indicating that it wasn't a cheap option. In 1905, a specialized flag selling shop emerged in Hwangto-hyun, now it is Gwanghwamun Naegori. With the approval of the palace, flags of various sizes, including large, medium, and small, were produced. And that was the 1 silver coin image. Stamps, those little squares of paper used to send mail, played a surprising role in spreading the national emblem of Korea. 1894, the taegukgi found its place on postage stamp, becoming a prominent symbol on this everyday object. These stamps were printed in the United States. This international collaboration resulted in the absence of original printings plated with Korea. However, tangible proof of the taegukgi's early international exposure exists in the form of envelopes bearing these stamps. Sent from Korea to the United States, these envelopes demonstrate how stamps served as a vehicle for the national emblem, allowing it to travel beyond borders and gain recognition on a global stage. In 1901, a newly designed stamp was introduced in Korea, known as the Ihwa stamps, featuring Ihwa Moon. Interestingly, taeguk was also incorporated into its design. In 1901, Korea became a member of the Universal Postal Union and consequently issued a more expensive stamp, enabling long-distance mailing. Initially, the stamp was printed in a single color, but the expensive version, the bottom, featuring 2 colors was subsequently produced. In 1900, a newly introduced set of orders also features a national symbol. The highest ranking medal in this series is the Order of Kumcheok Daehunjang, followed by the Order of Ihwa Daehunjang, the Taegukjang for civil servants, the Jaungjang for military officers. Notably, 3 medals, Taegukjang, Ihwa Daehunjang, and Kumcheok Daehunjang, incorporated the taeguk symbol. Displayed above are front and back of the Kumcheok Daehunjang. On the right, King Gojong is seen wearing a medal with the supplementary order on his chest. He suspended the large cordon from his shoulder, positioning the main order underneath it. And that is the case. It's a set. The national symbol was also represented in military uniforms. Since 1895, Korea has adopted Western-style uniforms. Notably, there are epaulets on both shoulders, intricately embodied with the taeguk symbol. Let's explore some taegukgi that was produced during the period of Japanese rule. Under Japanese rule, as you know, it was challenging to preserve the national flag. However, during the March 1st movement in 1919, individuals defiantly brought out and waved the national flag. In 2019, a taegukgi was found in a building with the Jingwansa Temple in Seoul. Upon closer inspection, the right side, it was revealed that the Japanese flag was painted in black with the taeguk and sage. It was also designated as a treasure due to its symbolic role in the independence movement. And next is a wooden board designed for reproducing images of a Korean national flag. The taeguk and sage were carved into the wood. These boards were created for the mass production during the March 1st movement. The flag, known as the 남상락 태극기, crafted from silk with intricate embroidery, it is believed to have been handmade by 남상락's wife during the Machuan movement in Dangjin, Chungnam province. During the period of Japanese rule, the use of 태극기 became more prominent overseas. The first Korean immigrants arrived in Hawaii in 1902, and Korean groups actively utilized the national flag. In ceremonies at Korean organization, it became common to display both the Korean and American flags. Additionally, when the provisional government of the Republic of Korea was established in Shanghai, China in 1919, Korean independence activists prominently featured the national flag. The photo on the right side captures a moment after the provisional government held its New Year's party. This flag bears the inscription of Kim Gu, who served as a representative of the provisional government in 1941. Father Muse, a Belgian collaborator in the Korean independence movement, relocated to the United States. Kim Gu personally wrote on the national flag, urging independence activists to continue their efforts in the movement. Now the last slide. Korea regained its freedom in 1945, established the South Korean government in 1948, and standardized the format of the 태극기 in 1949, a design that has been maintained to the present day. Thank you for listening.
And last but not least, Jong-ah Woo is professor in the Division of Humanities and Social Sciences in Pohang University of Science and Technology. She earned her PhD in art history from University of California at Los Angeles in 2006 and MA and BA from Seoul National University. From 2018 to 2019, she was also a Getty Scholar. Her research area is in the post-war art of East Asia and the United States, with particular interests in collective memory, historical trauma, and identity politics. Dr. Woo has written for major exhibition catalogs of Korean artists such as Heo Do-ho, Lee Bul, Choi Jung-hwa, Oh In-hwan, An Kyu-chol, and Shin Mi-kyung, among others. She has also published in numerous academic journals, including Art Journal, Oxford Art Journal, and Archives of Asian Art, and regularly contributes to Art Forum International. And if it feels like you've seen Professor Wu somewhere, it's because, as Professor Pyun explained earlier, Professor Wu is a media celebrity in South Korea. You can find numerous clips from television programs on YouTube. And Professor Wu's paper today is titled Conceptually Material Condition of Korean Experimental Art.
Thank you, Hee-jun, for the introduction, and I want to thank the audience members for staying with us until now. And now I'm determined to become a real celebrity in order to meet up the anticipation of Kyung-hee. Okay, all right. So today I will explore the practices and theoretical discourses of conceptual art, or 개념 미술 as it is known in Korea. First, I will delve into the resonance between Yu-Han's art and idea and Bruno Latour's new materialism, both of which champion the agency of non-human entities. Then I will examine how Lee Gon-yong, a pioneering figure in Korean conceptual art, transformed the notion of interconnectedness between subject and object into a radical art form. Lee Gon-yong played a pivotal role in the ST Group, or Space and Time, an artist collective that was active from 1969 to 1981. ST is widely recognized as introducing conceptual art to Korean art scene. However, despite their affiliation with conceptual art, ST's practices and discourses were deeply rooted in materiality. By materiality, I refer to the tangible elements, both natural and artificial, that permeate the artist's living environment with which they coexist as ordinary human beings. These material entities, such as stones, trees, paper, earth, soil, glasses, and even the artist's own bodies became the focal point of their artistic experiments. It is this dynamic interplay that sets Korean conceptual art apart from its Western counterpart, which often emphasize the dematerialization of the art object. This paradoxical juxtaposition between concept and thing, the linguistic and the material, within the discourse of Korean conceptual art is what initially captivated my interest. So today I'm not going to talk about religiosity enough, but I have a lot of materiality and spirituality. So now you're looking at the early works of Lee Gon-yong, and I feel really privileged because we have Lee Gon-yong and ST's art practices in the art show in Guggenheim right now. So if you have a chance, I highly recommend to go there. The discourse and practices surrounding conceptual art in the Korean art world have undergone a dynamic evolution since the late 1960s, mirroring the shifting tides of the domestic art scene and the multiple ways in which Euro-American art was interpreted and adapted in Korea. The conceptual art from the West has served as a primary reference point and object of comparison of Korean artists and critics who have sought to establish their relevance within the global art world. Despite the severely limited access to the sources of information from abroad, artists and critics eagerly absorbed information about contemporary art. By 1970, principles of conceptual art, including dematerialization, the questioning of art object commercialization, and the rejection of artist authority, had gained traction in Korea. In parallel, Iohan's theoretical and artistic contributions to Japanese monoha profoundly influenced the conception and development of Korean conceptual art from the late 1960s onwards. Lee's series of groundbreaking essays published between 1969 and 1970 in Japan gained widespread readership among Korean artists. In Beyond Being and Nothingness, inspired by his encounter with Sekine Nobuo's Face Earth in 1968, Yuhan argued that this project revealed an alternative conception of man's relationship with nature, one that transcended the long-standing Western binarism of subject and object. Unlike representational art, Lee asserted that Face Earth presented nature as it is, in its raw, unmediated state. By emphasizing the specific moment and place of the work's installation, where the encounter between the work and the viewer, or between an object and a human, occurs, Lee argues that the meaning of an artwork emerging from this phenomenological experience. So this is it's a very well-known text, widely read by Japanese and like American and Korean artists at the time. Liu Han's relatum appears to be to the general viewer as a static object, a block of stone resting on a cracked glass plate. However, this seemingly fixed construction is a testament to a momentary action that occurred before it. The work's creation involved the artist bending over a glass plate, lifting a heavy stone with both hands, and then letting it fall. This moment of impact, akin to the moment Liu Han placed a dot in the center of his canvas, represents the essence of the work. It is a direct result of a highly concentrated action, allowing viewers to connect with the time of its creation. So, oh, sorry. And then he rearranged the glass in order to look at as natural as it is. So Liu Han's relatum in 1972, Liu Han changed the titles of his early works from Phenomenon and Perception to Relatum, a shift that reflects a move away from the duality of subject and object towards a focus on their relationship. The title Relatum emphasizes the interconnectedness of the stone and the glass and the artist's body, acknowledging their mutual influence and the dynamic nature of their encounter. Their significance lies not in their individual existence, but in their interaction in the space they co create. This tensional space challenges conventional perceptions and invites viewers to engage in a reciprocal encounter with the artwork. Liu Han's approach to materiality somehow aligns with the concept of actor network theory, or ANT, developed by sociologist of science Bruno Latour. ANT challenges the traditional Cartesian view of materiality as passive and subservient to human agency. Instead, it posits that materials or non human actors possess their own agency and can actively shape the world around them. For instance, in a lab setting, Latour argues scientists interact with various materials like samples and tools, forming symmetrical relationships that contribute to the production of scientific knowledge and new technology. The recognition of materials as vibrant and independent agents has a significant implication for our understanding of the Anthropocene, the current geological epoch marked by human impact on the Earth. The Anthropocene challenges the notion of a rigid separation between nature and society, highlighting the intricate interplay between human actions and the material world. ST emerged as a study group in 1968, convening regularly in Lee Geon-young's studio. Critic Kim Bo-kyung and fellow artists, along with Lee Geon-young of course, delved into current articles and publications from abroad. These translated works were then disseminated through their membership journals, fostering lively discussions, sometimes extending to public events. Joseph Kosu's seminal essay Art After Philosophy served as a pivotal catalyst for ST's early activities. Kosu's exploration of Wittgenstein's philosophy resonated strongly with the group's own intellectual pursuit, further solidifying their commitment to conceptual art. At the heart of their discussion lay the profound influence of Wittgenstein's philosophy of language, particularly his concept of language as a tool for constructing meaning through contextual interactions. This newfound understanding of language shaped the artistic practices of ST's members, leading them to question the traditional boundaries of art and explore the expressive potential of everyday objects. Lee Geon-young, however, distinguished his approach from Kosu's by emphasizing the concrete nature of objects. While Kosu's focused on language itself, Lee believed that objects could also possess a distinct language capable of conveying meaning and challenging conventional perceptions. His work Corporal Term, which is in Guggenheim right now, exemplifies this approach. For corporal term, Lee Geon-young presented a cube of soil with a length of 1 meter on each side, which was dug from the ground with a Zelkoba tree trunk still rooted in the center. Displaced to the gallery, the trees and soil disrupted the cultural context of the museum and its separation from the natural world. It was a site where the existing meaning was erased and the existence as it is was revealed by encountering it. Although the corporal term was well received at the Paris Biennale, Lee Geon-young eventually abandoned art objects and turned towards performance, which he called event. Unlike the more commonly used terms happening or performance, Lee Geon-young chose the term event in order to emphasize a lack of cause or purpose and the abandonment of artist's subjectivity. His work was characterized by its tautological nature. In 1975, Lee Geon-young presented his first event titled The Equal Area at Baeklook Gallery. I don't have the document photograph of it, so I just brought a similar version of it. This performance marked a significant shift in his artistic practice, moving away from material objects toward ephemeral actions. During the performance, Lee Geon-young meticulously ironed a large sheet of rice paper, folding it precisely into his pocket. Upon arriving at the gallery, he unfolded the paper and laid it flat on one side of the floor. With a piece of chalk, he traced the outline of the paper, creating a visible demarcation on the gallery floor. Next, Lee Geon-young picked up the paper and began walking around the room, gradually tearing it into smaller pieces. These fragments were scattered around the perimeter of the chalk outline, transforming the once pristine sheet of paper into a scattered collection of scraps. Finally, Lee Geon-young retrieved a broom and diligently swept up the scattered paper pieces, carefully gathering them back within the chalk-drawn outline. The once expansive sheet of paper was now confined within a smaller, more concentrated form. Through this simple yet profound performance, Lee Geon-young demonstrated the logical structure of the rice paper, despite altered physical state, retained its original area somehow. He minimized the physical aspect of the work, eliminating any room for the artist's subjective interpretation or symbolic meaning. Instead, the focus was on the inherent properties of the material and the transformation it underwent through a series of logical consequences. The equal area marked a crucial in Lee Geon-young's artistic journey, establishing the foundations for his subsequent event performances, all of which explore the relationship between logic, action, and the physical world. Lee Geon-young's first performance that actively engaged his own body was 5 steps. He began by sitting quietly on a chair, then he rose and walked forward 5 steps, announcing each step with a corresponding number. Reaching the 5th step, he paused and drew a chalk line in front of his shoes. He then returned to the chair and resumed his seated position. This cycle was repeated 4 more times. While Lee Geon-young's gait remained natural throughout the performance, the position of the chalk lines gradually shifted. For the final iteration, Lee Geon-young extended his stride as wide as possible, taking 5 steps that carried him beyond the audience. He drew a final line at a considerable distance from the previous ones and disappeared from sight. Through this simple yet evocative performance, Lee Geon-young demonstrated the inherent variability of seemingly straightforward actions. Even a mundane act like taking 5 steps is unique to each individual and each iteration. In The Logic of Place, which is my favorite, Lee Geon-young further explored the relationship between language, space, and the body. He began by drawing a circle on the floor. Standing at a distance, he pointed to the interior of the circle and declared there, 저기. He then stepped inside the circle and proclaimed here, 여기. Finally, he stepped back outside the circle and pointed the circle behind his back, announcing over there, 거기. By repeatedly referring to the same location with different words, Lee Geon-young demonstrated the arbitrary nature of language and its ability to assign meaning to space. The performance underscored the dynamic relationship between the body and its surroundings, with the performance position determining the designation of space. If Kim Bo-kyung, the critic of ST members, previously summarized Korean contemporary art as making objects speak with new words through things as they are, in terms of Yoo Hwan's tenet of relatum, then the object that speaks in Lee Geon-young's work is the artist's body, which acts as it is. And there happened a very unexpected turn. Yoo Hwan's critique of representation and his emphasis on phenomenological relationships between subject and object became paradoxically associated with Korean monochrome paintings, or 단색화, as a distinct Korean movement of abstract painting. The groundbreaking exhibition, 5 Korean Artists, 5 Colors of Whiteness, held at the Tokyo Gallery in 1975, marked a crucial moment in this convergence. Yoo Hwan's insistence on material agency resonated with the aesthetics of white, the Laozhang philosophy implied by inaction, and the spirituality of performance through repetitive physical actions of the abstract painters. This confluence led to the emergence of monochrome paintings as a representation of essentially Korean modern art. Within the discourse of 단색화, seemingly incompatible notions of spirituality, materiality, and conceptual art were seamlessly interwoven to support an ethnocentric essentialism. Critic Yi Il in the exhibition catalog drew upon an array of Korean traditional artifacts of white colors, such as commoners' clothing and Joseon period's porcelain, in order to establish the color white as a representation of Korean spirit. This process effectively transformed Iohan's critique of modernity and humanism into a discourse of Korea's unique nationality and spirituality, encapsulated in the term of dematerialization and pan-naturalism. Tansekwa in this context became a manifestation of Korean identity, transcending the boundaries of artistic movements and ideologies. In the wake of, now these are the practices of Tansekwa painters on the left side. That's Yuhan, Park Seo-bo, and Jung Sang-hwa. This process in the wake of Minjung art's emergence in the 1980s, ST faced criticism for being an outdated movement that blindly imitated Western art and remained indifferent to the grim realities of military dictatorship. This criticism led to the group's disbandment. During the 1980s, Tansekwa took center stage, establishing itself as Korean modernism. This movement stood in ideological contrast to Minjung art, which advocated for art as a political and social statement. Conceptual art found itself marginalized amidst this ideological clash, but they never stopped. Currently at the Guggenheim Museum, Lee Gon-yong and ST member Song Neung-kyung are taking center stage at the exhibition Only the Young. In a New York Times interview, Lee Gon-yong humbly remarked, I quote, "My art is not special, it is not unique, it's about communicating with the things that are close to us," end of quote. He further elaborated, so if the audience looks into it deeply, we'll be able to find things that relate to us both. Although it took time for their work to be recognized as it is, the journey has been well worth it. Thank you very much.
While people are thinking of questions, do you have any questions for each other? Oh, you. Hooray. Thank you.
I am so humbled by these amazing presentations. Professor Wu, could you tell us a little bit more about why you like the one of the circle, the kogi yogi jogi?
I just think it's so brilliant and bright and smart because this is the same circle, but by just very simple movement, it demonstrates how language, how a meaning is constructed by different position. The same thing can be here, there, and over there somehow. So Lee Gon-yong was really interested in the philosophy of language, and he even draw the portraiture of Wittgenstein in his room, and his mom misunderstood it as a portrait of Jesus Christ. But anyway, so I believe that it's quite simple action, but somehow it shows enough about how language works. So yeah, you can. Did you see the show at the Guggenheim yet? No, yeah, you will see a lot of documentation about that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking today. All your presentations were wonderful. I have a question for Professor Zhang. I was wondering if you had any thoughts about the sort of popularity and prevalence of historical dramas, historical K-dramas, and whether or not they played into, you talked about the museumization of historical Korea.
Oh, thank you for the question. I actually never thought about that, but this was in the early 1980s. And in a longer version of this talk, I talk about how this effort was part of the collective effort to build and construct Koreanness. And part of it during the Park Chung-hee era was erecting Lee Sun-shin monuments and statues. So it kind of makes sense with dramas, but I haven't actually dug into it. So yeah, I cannot give you a definite answer. I'm sorry.
Any other questions?
Thank you for such interesting talks. I have a question about the Korean flag. Maybe this is a very dumb question. I was just wondering if you could tell us why. I mean, it seems like the earlier flags and later flags, like they rotate 90 degrees. I was wondering if you could tell us why there is that rotation of the flag.
국기가 태극기 쪽에부터 이렇게 세로로 걸렸다 가로로. My English poor. So I ask to Professor Wu. 사실은 잘 모르는데.
You understood, right?
야, 사실은 잘 모르는데요. 그 19세기의 국기에 대한 멘션이 어디에도 없어서 어떻게 걸어야 된다 이런 것은 잘 없지만 그때 이제 국기라는 게 원래 서양 웨스턴 개념이니까 서양에서 어떻게 걸었는가를 가지고 응용해서 했다고 생각하고
Well, because we don't have any document in the 19th century about how to manage and install the flag, but somehow the notion of flag itself came from a Western world. So maybe the Koreans at the time applied some Western examples in order to install the flags.
그리고 장소에 따라서 걸었고 지금은 사실은 가로형이 일반적이라고 생각하지만 그런 게 규정된 것은 아니었던 것 같습니다.
It depends on the place, but still it's the horizontal format is pretty normal, but it is not really fixed, right? I don't know why I had to interpret for you, right? But anyway, for the audience members.
For me.
All right.
Any other questions? Oh, thank you.
I have a question to Dr. Zhang, and then you showed that the wonderful manual, so detailed, and I just wondered actually who made those manuals. Was it actually been determined by the Olympic and committee, or is it actually there's an input from Korean designers or Korean organizations in order to actually kind of lay out such a detailed kind of rules?
So the organizing committee was largely filled with ex-military officers, and they from very early on after Korea got selected to host the Olympics in 1981, they immediately contacted Professor Cho Young-jae from Seoul National University, and he comprised the Professional Design Council early in the 1982. So it began in the February, and by June, the council was completed. That doesn't mean that the designers were involved in or on the council necessarily designed the graphics on the manual. So there was a separate design I don't know how to design studio inside, like a tiny design studio, three-man design studio inside the organizing committee, which is comprised mainly of Hwang Bo-young and Kim Seung-jin. Another person, it changes all the time. So they when Professor Yang Seung-chun from Seoul National University designed the official emblem, they designed all the other complementary graphics, including the pictograms. And then when cultural posters were made in the 1987, they chose 12 leading designers, and some of them, like Kim Young-gi, were on the council. So they were, and Yang Seung-chun was also involved in the posters as well. So they knew how the manual was made, how the design process was determined. So this was more of a collaboration between the design studio within the in-house design studio within the organizing committee and the design council of design professors, and then some other designers who were commissioned with different tasks.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you. I have a question about the national flag, and I'm happy to translate myself afterwards. I was really, I mean, I felt like the talk was such a valuable opportunity to think about the materiality of the flag. I was so surprised to learn about the Manchester cotton, for example. So I'm wondering, as the national flag gets regularized and it's strongly tied to the idea of national identity, what happens to the material? What is the current national flag made of? What kind of fabric? And is there any attempt to tie the material itself to national industry or national production? And for example, is there a regulation that it has to be made in a fabric that's produced in Korea, for example? And I'm thinking of the Indian national flag as a comparison, which is made from the hensban khadi fabric, referring to Gandhi's anti-imperialist movement. 저 번역을 하겠습니다. 네, 목순 선생님 발표에서 저는 그 태극기의 물질성에 대해서 생각해 볼 수 있는 기회가 너무 재밌었고, 특히 태극기가 면이나 비단이나 그리고 특히 맨체스터에서 수입된 면직물로 만들어졌다는 게 굉장히 놀라웠는데, 혹시 나중에 점점 태극기가 그 국가 정체성이랑 연결이 되면서 그 태극기의 문양 외에도 태극기의 물질성, 그러니까 그 태극기의 소재가 된 천을 국가 정체성과 연결시키려는 의도가 있는지 궁금합니다. 예를 들어서 꼭 국내에서 생산된 섬유로 만든다든가. 그래서 제가 비교로 생각하는 거는 인도 국기 같은 경우는 그 간디 독립운동에 사용되었던 그 손으로 직접 짠 그 면직물을 사용하거든요. 혹시 그래서 그런 시도가 태극기에도 있었는지 궁금합니다.
태극기는 말씀드렸지만 1880년대에 만들어졌고 1910년에 나라가 식민지가 되니까 그 사이에 그런 식의 운동이 일어나긴 어려웠던 것 같고, 사실 저도 태극기의 물실성에 대해서 이번에 처음 생각했는데, 발표를 준비하면서 아까 발표에서 했듯이 90cm짜리 폭의 면이라는 게 과연 그때 어떻게 있었지? 그게 저한테도 질문이었어서 이것저것 찾아보다가 그 궤불을 찾게 돼서 되게 다행이라고 생각을 했는데, 그 당시에 그 경제 자료를 보면 면의 수입이 굉장히 많더라고요. 그러니까 그 전에 한국에서 짜는 면은 그러니까 기계지만 손으로 하는 거기 때문에 폭이 44cm 정도밖에 안 되는 거예요. 실크도 그렇고. 그러니까 그렇게 넓은 거는 공장제로 해야 되기 때문에 한국에서 생산할 수가 없는데, 굉장히 큰 면으로 된 뭔가를 만들려면 이제 수입했어야 되는 거라서 수입면을 썼었고, 한국이 1910년까지는 그런 생산 시스템이 없는 거죠. 네. 그리고 그 여기까지 할까요? 너무 길어요?
All right, so like Taegukgi was first invented in 1880s, and Korea was colonized in 1910. So in between, there cannot be some consideration of that material like in nature, and this is the first like a chance for even for her, she's like a specialist of Taegukgi, to in order to think about the materiality. And in the case of cotton, she found out that in Korea, like it's basically handmade, so the width cannot be larger than 44 centimeters, which is slightly over like 1 feet, right? And 1.5 feet, I guess. And then the silk is also like that. So in order to make the large flag, the cotton should be made in factory. But during that time, Korea didn't have the facilities to make that the cotton in factory. So it was like very lucky finding that she found out that the kwebul was made in Manchester cotton, and she realized that there are large amount of cotton was imported at the time.
그런데 이제 그 한국에서 그런 면을 생산할 수 있는 건 한 1930년대에나 가능해져서, 오늘은 다루지 못했지만 태극성표 광목이라는 게 있어요. 그게 그 국산을 사용하자 뭐 이런 캠페인 가지고 하는데, 불행히도 그때는 태극기를 만들 수가 없으니까, 예, 그 재패니즈 룰이니까, 그래서 태극기로 그걸 만들지는 못하고 그 광목 회사가 브랜드 네임을 태극성표라고 한 거는 그런 애국심에 기대는 마케팅을 한 거죠. 조금 인도하고는 다르지만 그런 게 좀 있다는 생각은 합니다.
So in the 1930s, there appeared a big industry, like fabric industry. Taegukseong brand mark. Taegukseong is like a Taeguk star. So, but still, despite that, the facilities of fabric manufacturer established, it was under the Japanese colonialism, so they could not produce teguki apparently, but somehow they used this teguk mark as their brand name, and this is partially their like a commercial like a strategy in order to rely on the patriotism of the Korean customers at the time. So this case cannot be different from the Indian case, but still there can be some relationship between this patriotism and materiality and teguk as a symbol of the nation.
Please join me in thanking our presenters.
Well, all good things must come to an end. So, uh, thank you everyone for participating and being here with us for the past 2 days. It is a great pleasure to introduce our closing discussant, Dr. Yuna Lee. She's a principal lecturer based at the Center for Design History at the University of Brighton in the UK. Her research interests are design history and material culture in Korea and East Asia, transnational and cross-cultural studies of modernity and modernism, representations of national and personal identities, and political agencies of art and design. So we couldn't have found a better person to give a closing remark, and we're very happy that Dr. Lee could join us. Her new co-edited volume, Design and Modernity in Asia, National Identity and Transnational Exchanges, 1945 to 1990, was published in 2022. She was also the advisor for the exhibition Hallyu, the Korean Wave, held at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London in 2022 to 2023, which will open at the Museum of Fine Arts Boston in March 2024. So if you're here, please go see it. Most recently, her chapter on fashion photography in Korea was published in Dress History of Korea, Critical Perspectives of Primary Sources. She received her BA and MA from Seoul National University and her PhD from the University of Brighton. Please welcome Dr. Lee to the stage.
Thank you, Dr. Shin, for that kind introduction. And it sounds like I've done a lot. Actually, I don't feel like that at all. So, and so it was. I mean, when I was invited to the conference, and then I asked the organizers and Dr. Pian and Dr. Shin asked me to give a closing remark, and I kind of got panicked, like, oh my god, I have to sit in the conference and then write diligent note, and then actually kind of say something about it. So, and it's a Saturday afternoon and after lunchtime, so my closing remark is going to be really quite short and sweet. That's what I'm trying to deliver here. And so I was thinking about this topic of the religiosity and spirituality, material culture in Korea as a design historian and material culture. So I based in UK and I trained as a design historian. And I mainly teach design history and material culture to the undergraduate and MA students. So when I was looking at this like a topic of the conference, and then I was actually received the program, and I was very interested in how the conference organizers and the speakers would address the religiosity and spirituality and material culture. I mean, through the lenses of this kind of material culture, and then thinking about how to explore that how kind of religion happens in the material world. So that include images and devotional objects and architectural spaces and sacred spaces and works of art and mass-produced artifacts. And I think actually we covered most of those kind of material matters and material things actually in our conference for the yesterday's and today's panels. And also the less no less important aspects of those material practice are the many different kinds of practices. Equally important is rituals. So it's kind of it seems to be it's kind of a beyond material matters and material things, but actually the thinking about practices and those practices, what material things do in those practices, how actually things to be used in those practices become really interesting aspects. And then those includes like rituals and dominations and ceremonies and some meditations, and some of them actually kind of we looked at some of the propaganda and how the kind of exhibition displays show those things. And then we talked about magics and something we can't really understand, and some related some kind of pilgrimage actually, and also thinking about how those things can be interpreted as well. And so I think we looked at all those kind of, number of speakers talked about those kind of practices, and then how, the kind of rituals and practice aspects of actually something intangible, something cannot be actually captured. I mean, we can capture them in videos these days, of course, but, kind of embodied experience of those rituals cannot be actually kind of captured very easily. So those are kind of aspects actually, which actually really kind of enlightened me to thinking about the idea of actually spirituality and the religiosity in the kind of material world. And then also thinking about the study of religion, how kind of religious studies kind of this is kind of related to the kind of a rise of material terms and what they call it in academia, actually material terms. And so people, academics and then scholars and all the artists were starting to the kind of a interested in the idea of material things. And then, like Professor Wu mentioned at the end, her in her presentation, and Latour's actually actor network theory actually had a really big kind of impact on thinking about those kind of the human and non-human interactions and agencies in those kind of different active and inactive kind of agencies. So it's the thinking about the study of religions actually kind of turning away from the thinking about philosophies and system of the beliefs, or kind of thinking about religion as a kind of a private and internal kind of individual matters, and the realm of those individual realms. And I think thinking about this kind of material aspect is really encourages us to think about religion as a kind of practicable religion in everyday and also embodied and sensory perspectives of those religions. And I thought that was really kind of a quite well presented in the variety of papers by the speakers in those in our conference. And also what was quite interesting to think about is actually the getting into the field. So a number of us who are presenting in we're working in the academia, and then we are majoritarily a lot of us were art historians, and then we had the scholars from different kind of field as well. But what was quite noticeable in some of the papers was actually how those scholars actually getting out into the field and thinking outside of those academia, and then thinking about how people create their own world of belief through the kind of everyday practice and everyday experience. And that expands us to look at thinking about fandoms of a K-pop in a kind of religious frame is another examples, and thinking about going into the yesterday David Kim's really inspiring kind of talks, a very reflective talk about his experience in going in interaction with the shamans, and was really inspiring in terms of thinking about the how do we actually kind of understand the religiosity, spirituality within everyday settings, everyday practice. And also thinking about practice actually kind of made us to think about shifting, I mean, the concentration on kind of thinking about images and objects as and so the often actually we encounter those religious images and objects, and then much of actually the kind of a long-standing art history is very much interested in actually kind of look at kind of understanding the meaning of those images and iconographies of those images, and then the colors and then compositions of those images, which actually kind of create those the carries the messages of religions and spiritual kind of the teachings. But when we're thinking about the beyond those images and objects, and then thinking about what actually images do, and then how those images actually kind of the operates in the kind of social practice, and then also what might be those trajectories of those images and objects, and then those become really interested in, and I think some of the papers in the conference also did talk about those things, and so and the some of the things actually we also listened during the conference was thinking about this is actually something really we cannot separate idea of actually religion and spirituality in from the world we're living in, which is commercialized, very much actually capitalist society. So the much of actually our practice related to religion is also related with the kind of commercial practice and consumption, and that's very much actually one of the panel discussion today was really highlighted that context of how something seemingly beyond those kind of commercial realm is actually really very much embedded in those commercial practice and capitalism and the kind of logics of capitalist society. And so the few of the things actually I kind of is my observation, and it was something I wanted to close this. And one of the things I was really struck by is actually the kind of such a diverse kind of topics. And when I actually received the program, I was thinking, I'm not really quite sure how this is going to all pull together, and in order to discuss this topic. And actually, all the credits goes to the organizers, Dr. Shin and Dr. Pan, actually kind of carefully selecting their papers and then soliciting speakers in order to deliver those kind of contents all together, which actually matched really well. So those are 4 sessions. We looked at intangible materiality and tangible spirituality, and porous borders, where the kind of the icons and objects are traveled around, and also the consumption and then kind of the consumption of those kind of material things in the religious practice, and how that has been discussed in different kind of format, and then also thinking about the kind of the kind of materiality and then kind of spirituality in the different kind of Korean context in contemporary art practices, and also kind of a making of actually Korean national flags, and then also designing and the national kind of brand altogether in 1980s. And so this really shows kind of the breadth of actually kind of studies which this topic can take us to, and also I really appreciate to having the scholars from very different kind of backgrounds. So yesterday we had scholars actually from the anthropological background and in more philosophical studies, and so those kind of very much kind of create critical thinkings around and philosophical thinkings around the kind of material relations when you practice religion, really kind of made us question about the how we actually practice our beliefs in the kind of in our everyday kind of the world. So that was a really very exciting 2 days of conference, and I think I'm gonna just finish and by thanking 2 of the organizers and give applause to the. And then last thank you is going to the Bard Graduate Center, who is hosting this event. And I'm a big fan of Bard Graduate Center and actually recipient of their kind of a research forum newsletters all the time. And I was always envious about their amazing program. And I'm so pleased actually Korean art and Korean material culture actually has a mark in their program as well. So that's amazing. Yeah. Thank you.